I'm Tatiana Nagy, welcoming you today with Denis Yalisevich.
Hello, Tatiana and viewers.
Thank you, viewers, for subscribing to our channel, liking us, and sharing this video with your friends. I encourage you to also subscribe to Denis's channel. Denis, I suggest we continue yesterday's conversation because yesterday we talked about the following. Europe and Zelensky are working to survive and taking every possible step for peace in Ukraine. They are forming plans with 10 points. Trump is on a tour. Now, for his part, he is trying to influence the situation in Ukraine. And here's what Zelensky said today at the press conference. We will not leave any part of our country, not a single meter, not a single village, not a single city. If anyone thinks that the war can be frozen by giving up Crimea, Donbas, or any other territory, that's not freezing, that's capitulation. I would like to hear your opinion. Whose plan is this? Zelensky's plan, Europe's plan, or everyone's together? Is this a plan for peace, for war, or for something else?
I'll tell you about Zelensky's plan now. I'm sure you'll ask me about it yourself. Specifically, because as you said, it's a common thing to show strength, to show the military, like, guys, I'm standing until the end. But you know what the manipulation is? It's a primitive manipulation, just like all his gang does. Is Crimea still a relevant topic? Agreed, no one has even brought it up on the agenda at all, but he mentions it on purpose. It's like someone is telling Zelensky to just give up Crimea, Donbas, and surrender. Well, no one is suggesting that. We're talking about a reasonable compromise with a future for Ukraine, not about that. Putin takes everything you want, but he intentionally rewords everything. Watch how propaganda will claim anyone discussing compromise is an enemy of Ukraine, either directly or worse. Actually, this shows there is no plan. He keeps repeating the same thing like a wind-up toy, like a parrot. Where is there any meaning in his words at all? Where is there any suggestion in what he says? If you say we're continuing yesterday's conversation, where's the suggestion? You should propose a plan.
I want to clarify why we're really talking about Crimea now, about the fact that we won't leave Donbas, about Crimea. At the moment, we don't control Crimea the way we would like to. But what about freezing along the front line? I mean, how do we relate these things? How should we understand this? Freezing along the front line, we're not in Crimea right now, right? Yes, freezing along the front line. So how do we relate these things to each other?
That's a good question, because look, if we're talking about the real situation along the front line, it means we just keep those parts of Donbas that we still control. However, parts of Zaporizhia and Kherson will remain under Russian control. Crimea, of course, and what they've created there as the Luhansk People's Republic and Donetsk People's Republic, well, that part of Donbas they've occupied will also be controlled by the Russians. Okay, it's frozen. What's next? Let's say it's Putin. So what? Do you want to leave this wound and keep claiming we'll get it back someday? We're stockpiling weapons here under NATO's pretext to retake it by force. So what happens next? So the country will continue to live in this uncertain state, in a state of constant trench warfare as they want it to be. I can get ahead of you right now. He spoke today and said that Ukraine will start exporting weapons next month. Here's his plan, Tatiana, the Erdogan model, but I call it Erdogan model squared. Because our country is engaged in active combat, in a state of real full-scale war. Erdogan doesn't have that. So Tsar Zelensky and his entourage will sit there producing weapons, with half likely lost to corruption. National Anti-Corruption Bureau of Ukraine disclosed spending 90 million hryvnias on drones today. A tiny amount in a huge chain. That's what they probably managed to prove, or maybe they'll be able to prove it, God willing. So Tsar, I'm sitting here and going to sell weapons. You know what bothers me the most here? If our country becomes a weapons hub, there will always be war here. That's his plan. To freeze things along the line of demarcation without solving the global issue that led to all this and could lead to more. Sell weapons, sell, that's it, everything's great, but it hurts me. Continue. Our country has a unique geographical location and even has resources. And there used to be a huge population, and there are still quite a lot of people in the country. They might still return there with their lost strength. We had everything. In the end, our country will only be known for weapons which we had to produce out of necessity, not for technology like in Israel, where life drives innovation and production.
The Europeans want to help us. For example, what does Sweden's prime minister say? He says that a memorandum has been signed with Zelensky and that they want to buy 150 to 100 Gripen fighter jets. It's a type of missile that requires trained operators. But nevertheless, the Prime Minister of Sweden says that it would be good to build such a factory in Ukraine. To build this factory, and not from scratch, but just to assemble these structures, to assemble these missiles, it will take about 3 years before we can start doing this. If we take into account that statement by Tusk, where Zelensky said the war would last about 3 years, well, today he already says that's not correct. This phrase was quoted that for 3 years he wants Europeans to help Ukraine. How would you comment on this?
Haha, the Prime Minister of Sweden has other things to do. For example, a 16-year-old girl was raped there, and the court acquitted the rapist because he didn't rape her long enough. I'm not sure if they timed it with a stopwatch, but it's just a nightmare. He talks about what needs to be built in Ukraine. Hugging Zelensky, I've seen everything. I'll tell you what their plan is. The thing is, our labor is cheap compared to Europe. That's the whole plan. What would cost 100,000 euros to build in Europe will cost 30 to 40,000 euros to build in Ukraine. That's it. And that's the whole plan. You guys over there are fighting, building weapons, including for us. Do you understand the plan? Now they're looking. Aha. So you can produce weapons cheaply over there. People here are educated. This isn't Somalia or Syria. Everything can be implemented quickly. The territory is enormous. We'll make it so they're always at war. Let them keep pestering Putin endlessly. We're fine with everything. They're fighting and making weapons for us. Great scheme, but where are Ukraine, happiness, the future, and Ukrainians? They don't mention it.
Today, an article literally came out. Journalists wrote about it in Latvia, and journalists in Finland confirmed it as well. They write that a network of companies from Latvia, Lithuania, and Estonia continue to refuel Russian tankers of the Shadow Fleet. So these countries continue to buy Russian oil just as they did before. But Finn, the official says, claims that there hasn't been any reduction in purchases at all since the war in Ukraine began. So Russian maritime shipments today are at the same level as they were before and at the start of the war. They are still buying oil in Ukraine.
Yes, they buy oil, they interact with the Shadow Fleet, and they do everything their own way. That's where the treachery lies, you see? Whatever they need in their offices, they do it even under the table. But when it comes to war, it's like people go out there, we're not going. That's what's truly horrifying. I published a table in Bloomberg and discussed it. Now, the European Union is Russia's top gas buyer, not oil. Do you get it? They're funding Putin's terrorism. They don't deserve any kind words. All of this, like our irrational politicians and the European ones, belongs on the scrap heap of history. And it's time to turn the page of history from that horror that was turned into the Soviet Sea, a Freudian slip into the Soviet Union. I meant to say the European Union and Western civilization. They ruined and distorted everything. It all needs fixing. A new page, new leaders, and everything will be different. And this will also affect Ukraine.
Orban has begun turning this page. If you pay attention to what Politico writes, they say that Orban plans to coordinate positions together with the Czech Republic and Slovakia in order to oppose the Ukrainian line of Brussels. Basically, they are advocating not to give money to Ukraine. And we know that Ukraine currently needs $140 billion. If this money is not provided, then at the beginning of 2026 in the first quarter, it will no longer be possible to finance such urgent needs. That's why they're looking for where to get it. And now Orban says that Ukraine shouldn't be given any money. On the other hand, Europeans see this as a betrayal. What do you think? How would you assess him?
For them, every right-wing leader is immediately an enemy. For them, an anti-war person is immediately pro-Russian. But after all, Orban, Slovakia, and the Slovenians are guided by only one thing. I'm telling you, I like Fica, for example. They believe Ukraine joining the European Union would greatly increase the risk of war. Subtitles. Next, they're close to Putin geographically, so those countries could be captured in 15 minutes, in the literal sense of the word. They are small, without an army, without anything. That's all there is to it. That's how it all happens. Today, Anna Paulina Luna, she's a congresswoman, wrote a good post, or maybe it was yesterday, saying that these Europeans are sitting around And instead of ending the war, they're sending young people to fight. She called them sociopaths, and they truly are. They sit fat in their offices on these budgets, cutting up European taxpayers' money who work hard and send our young people to war. It's just a disgrace. Exactly, a historical disgrace.
And Germany, a lot of Ukrainians, since the moment they allowed boys up to 22 years old to leave, since then, a lot of Ukrainians have come to Germany. They need money, they have to be provided for. So it would be better not to accept them in Germany, but to send them to war. Against this background, they say again that winter in Ukraine is very hard. Money needs to be given to come together and help Ukraine get through this winter. Here's how to see it. We give you money, you fight, and your young people die. Subtitruvalnitsia.
Yes, the thing is, they've gone crazy over there too in Germany. Subtitruvalnitsia. It's all the same conversation, actually. Subtitri. For them, it's normal if Syrians kill and rape, but not young Ukrainians. Yet after 3 to 5 years, these Ukrainians get passports and become Germans. And these are Germans who can do a lot and can contribute a lot to their country, including jobs, workforce, taking positions that Germans themselves don't want to take. One thing contradicts the other. Merz has his own opinion altogether, but I don't understand how to interpret this. That's fine. They'll go to Poland, which will gladly accept them. I know about the Czech Republic. Statistics show that, in my opinion, the Czech Republic is the leader in accepting people of the age you mentioned, young people. There are many countries that will gladly accept people who won't engage in crime, won't kill anyone, won't stab or rape anyone, but will go to work.
Everyone backs Urban, which isn't surprising. He's meeting Lavrov today and has specific requests. He believes that this global crisis, which everyone in the world started together, needs to be resolved somehow. It needs to be stopped. And for that, it needs to be organized. It would be good to have a meeting between Russia and the West. Trump could be involved as well, and it could be held in Budapest. Do you think Europe can really reach a common understanding with Russia, and can Europe be trusted? Can we trust Europe? They say one thing, do another, and want something else.
You can't trust anyone, not Russia or Europe. But Europe, you see, is almost entirely under the globalists now, except for Eastern Europe, which is actually the stronghold of common sense. Well, for example, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, Slovenia, the Czech Republic, in this world, not to some extent, but fully. No, I have no hope. They're just fueling the fire. Who's the most active? The Baltic countries, long influenced by United States Agency for International Development, tested many technologies now being introduced to Ukraine. Language policies, let's not repeat ourselves, it's the same. This is how it will all work. They keep fueling the fire over and over. It's their chance to survive. And that means it's necessary.
And Trump's actions, on the contrary, are seen as not good enough because it's believed that he's looking for personal gain in all these countries, making deals that benefit himself and offering them deals that are also beneficial for them. But he doesn't lower tariffs on imports of goods from Asian countries to America. Why do you think he's doing this, and do you think it's right?
For Trump, everything is right, just as it is for America, but he's not a warmonger. Look, very much so. It could have been handled another way. Trump could have said everything, dividing China and Russia, weakening both and accomplishing both goals at once. I give Ukraine everything in huge quantities, and in return, take resources and everything else from Ukraine. In short, give Ukraine all its nuclear power plants and other assets, plus weapons. Just say yes and let your young people die there, as happened in Paraguay. And America would profit, but that's not how it works. Trump is doing everything to end the war. If these two Volodya's were more reasonable, the war would have ended in spring as planned. Trump planned to end the war in the spring in May. That didn't happen, so as we've discussed, plans B, C, D, E, and others are now in motion. So we don't need to talk about Trump. We need to talk about Zelensky, who is the president and who has completely messed up all internal affairs. All right, let me get back to your question once again. They keep sending Tomahawks constantly, but Tomahawks won't bring peace to Ukraine. You see, Tomahawks won't bring peace to Ukraine.
I understand. And now the situation is very difficult in Pokrovsk and Kupiansk. They say there is a big threat of encirclement in Kupiansk for our soldiers. It's dangerous. Regarding Pokrovsk, they say there is also such a possibility, maybe not right now, but it's also very difficult there. And in public forums, people are writing about why they are trying to send more soldiers to Pokrovsk if they see that they could be surrounded and an extremely large number of people could die. At the same time, Zelensky says that a counteroffensive is needed, that Pokrovsk is very important for the Russians and we need to defend it. And so we understand that things are not as we would like them to be, but we can't do anything to change it.
Well, yes, as far as I know, if I'm not mistaken, they've already sent main intelligence directorate special forces to the Pokrovsk direction. This is already one of the last levers. Yes, Tatiana, the war must end. Why bother with this counteroffensive? We should focus on ending the war. I stand my ground. I've never heard an actual peace plan from Zelensky. You see, he can't say it. If he says he's ready for a territorial compromise, that ends politics, military relations, and everything else. Well, you see, right now I'm kind of criticizing Zelensky, but the one they might put in his place, and you see his power is being cut away layer by layer. It comes out in the New York Times. I published this yesterday. It comes out in the New York Times, the title, the headline of the article. A company that 3 years ago was doing film castings, screen tests, worked for Zelensky. Now it's $1 billion tender to arm Podron, and Tatiana wins the $1 billion. Can you imagine how much money that is? It's enormous, just enormous, absolutely colossal money. And the company that was doing the screen tests, we all understand how this works. That's what they need the war for. That's why he will. Making some stupid, useless plans. Just that one company alone became known for $1 billion. Here's the answer to all the questions. His circle is packing up these Medici, and that's how it all keeps going. And he'll keep putting on that actor's face of his, that cheap acting, trying to pump up his power. But unfortunately, winter is still ahead. Today is only the end of October. Subtitles by Dima Torzak, and then it will only get scarier and scarier.
Zelensky said today the heat will be turned on soon. They will monitor which areas stay above 8 degrees C, and if temperatures remain above that for 3 days, they'll provide heating. So how long will it last? And they say there will be enough money to buy gas. If not, there will be enough. Whether this is true or not, we'll see. But they're demanding that Europe provide the money. Europe is weighing two options, using the frozen Russian assets, which are being discussed slowly, Brussels versus France. They say that somehow, maybe with Chechen, they will either join in or not provide funding, OET. If we consider the worst case scenario, where Europe doesn't provide funding and America doesn't give money, then Ukrainians will be left without heat.
No, they will find some way out of the situation, but I like it, like in quotation marks. Everyone's discussing the current situation, but I might reveal a harsh truth for many viewers. But do you know, people, that the gas Ukraine can and used to produce is enough for the entire population of Ukraine within the 1991 borders? I mean, for the population. Do you understand the previous fraudulent scheme? As for gas for industry, let them figure out how to purchase it themselves. Let's create a tax system for everyone so everyone pays less taxes. This industry will also be able to freely buy gas anywhere on the open market. Mutiny, but what about energy independence efforts? We have a bad relationship with Russia. It used to be clear to any normal, reasonable person that it was a potential aggressor. Why wasn't there a program for energy resilience, for replacing gas and electricity? We have nuclear power plants. Do you understand that? In everyday life, this change needs special programs with businesses, such as boilers, heaters, and electric kettles, and should promote electricity so private businesses can offer convenient installment plans. In short, really work on this. And this could have been done to significantly reduce gas consumption as a percentage over 4 to 5 years. But Poroshenko also didn't do this. According to the press, he secretly traded coal with Medvedchuk, and these conversations are available online. I traded a little, someone else did too, while others sat in the cold. Then these so-called experts come out and scare people. The apartment will be 5 to 10 degrees and there will be no electricity. Yesterday I read people will be without power for 20 hours daily. But why? Honestly, I want to say it a bit more bluntly. Why are you telling all this right now? Or advice like Kiev residents go to the countryside. What kind of advice is that?
Where are they supposed to go?
Where should they go? Well, maybe 1%, 2%, 3%, 5% will go somewhere. But the other 5%, people just need to work. Kids need to study. That's all. Well, that's just everyday life. Everything is connected. But they don't care about any of that, you see? That's the thing. They just don't care. What scares me is these same people say ending the war is necessary, but as long as this but exists, unfortunately, that's how everything will continue to be.
Do you have hope that the parliament can take the situation into its own hands? Mysichuk asked why deputies aren't acting and said people should contact him. Mazurashu echoed this on our broadcast, urging people to reach out to their elected officials. And then we will bring these issues to public attention, and our president will see what real problems we have, and they will respond.
No, there definitely won't be anything worse than such appeals, but I'm not a naive person. This parliament, they can all go on television and speak out against Zelensky, but when voting day comes, they all vote the way they're supposed to. Because there is already a group of members of parliament who are sitting in detention, who themselves lifted their own immunity, but that's a different topic, of course. And they're just worried. I've already told you each of them has a file, and for every other one, not just a file, but also a lot of dollars in an envelope. Although some criticize Zelensky harshly on air, parliament can't act independently. It follows Zelensky's or the special services directions depending on the deputy. It's complete hopelessness. We need a new parliament. We need a new president. We need a complete reset, a new political process. Right now, it's all just one big political swamp where they all make money. I just don't know what's going on in the mind of a person who clearly sees, here's a corrupt official, here's a corrupt official, here's a corrupt official. Drones are flying at me and my children or I are sitting without electricity. I still sort of justify it, but I don't know. It seems such a person deserves this. Harsh words, but that's the reality. From now on, it will only stay the same or get worse. You need to get your act together. Maybe you don't personally like someone, but you need to listen to some things that are just common sense and in the end, respect yourself. Is it normal for this to happen in Central Europe? Are we a dump? No, we have a wonderful country. I don't mean to offend any regions, but we don't want things to be like in some other countries. You know, there was a war, and even now, some tribes still fight, kill, and women have no rights or face abuse. We're not like that. We're part of Western civilization. We have beautiful cities, and we have a wonderful country. So we need to pull ourselves together and not allow this crap into power and demand that all of this goes away. Elections are necessary. No matter what people think, yes, drones, yes, no electricity, but elections are necessary. All of them, local, parliamentary, and presidential. But there is no political process. I'm already tired of Zelensky. As soon as he starts talking, I know what he'll say and can't stand his voice. There's nothing about people's lives, the future, or real ways to survive today. There's no money, but you keep going, right? It's just what Medvedev said in Russia, only disguised.
I would like to finish our conversation with what we started with. For example, both sides have separated along the demarcation line and a ceasefire is now in place. We're not talking about that. We're talking with you about the fact that Zelensky relies on a ceasefire, not on a long-lasting peace. He says peace should include security guarantees to prevent Russia from attacking, with everything based on this ceasefire. It's not possible to organize elections.
Yes, if Putin and Trump agree on it. I already told you in Alaska, Putin clearly told Trump that Zelensky shouldn't be the president of Ukraine. That's one of the demands. And in principle, they could agree to that. But let me tell you now, why Zelensky? So it's for these truths, which I criticized on your show yesterday and which he has opposed for years. Everything is on Google. People can check it. Because what's the plan? Let's say they achieve a ceasefire, as you correctly said, not a stable peace, but a ceasefire. To start with, let's have a ceasefire first, and then they know who Putin is and they can do something themselves. This ceasefire needs to be disrupted and then go to Trump and say, Donald, you see, it doesn't work with them. You can't make peace with them. You just have to bomb them with tomahawks, fight, and that's it. That's the plan. In other words, there's no intention for a real lasting peace. Yes, for Russia, that's just Lavrov. When you listen to him, you just want to smash your computer or the television you're listening to him on. It's complete injustice. They're not leaving, so we must negotiate with them and consider the interests of Russia, Europe, and all neighbors. That's the situation we're in. A poor, destitute country, drowned in blood, with a lot of deprived people, and everyone just wants to leave. That's all. We need to negotiate. And
earlier, it was discussed that one person might sign the agreements, followed by others signing the peace treaty. Who will the people choose? Who will they choose? Is this still relevant today or not anymore?
Yes, in Trump's team, I don't know which point includes such an option. You see, I've already talked to people many times. Everyone wants quick and simple solutions. But if top people like Trump, Vin, Litkov, and others can't handle this, then it's probably really very difficult. Everything is changing rapidly. Even one conversation between Lavrov and Rubio can make a big difference. And so what was planned for tomorrow gets postponed, I don't know to when, and some other item gets added instead. It's a very lively, very sensitive process. And recently, what has happened lately will make the process even more sensitive. Because Trump is really fed up with Putin, just absolutely fed up with Putin. Why? Not because of Ukraine or anything like that. He was personally disrespectful. To be continued. So Trump travels around and the whole world, frankly, kisses his hands, bows to him, but Putin starts playing games with Trump, showing off his KGB tricks and little jokes. Well, that won't happen anymore. That won't happen anymore. But that doesn't mean like those hotheads thought that now all the tomahawks will start flying and everyone will go to war. That won't happen either. That is, Trump knows perfectly well who Zelensky is, who Putin is, and his task is simply to somehow put this whole puzzle together.
Some people in Ukraine, including ordinary citizens and leaders, support Trump. However, the leaders who back Trump are also under sanctions. And I think Trump knows about this too, but why doesn't he take any measures to get these people released from sanctions? And if we're talking about the fact that maybe it's all about the elections, then these people could actually appear in the public space.
I have a negative view of sanctions, but people still ended up under them. I'm glad you raised this issue. So many people, including my political opponents, ended up under sanctions. But you can't just impose sanctions on anyone. Sanctions? You just can't do that. I'm categorically against it. I categorically released all political prisoners from jail and lifted all sanctions from them. But when you say there are supporters of Donald Trump among them, people need to distinguish between those who are Trump supporters ideologically, continuing his ideas, and those who just use the Trump brand. Things are going badly for him now, and most were previously involved in the system, even under Zelensky. Do you understand the situation? To be fair, I'm on the side of all these people, just like I'm on the side of political prisoners, refugees, or those under sanctions. About 80% of those sanctions are unfair, if we really look into it. But we shouldn't confuse reality, real ideological compatibility, or support for an ideology with saving your own skin under the Trump brand. I need to watch this. I get these people. Obviously, any means are probably good, but people shouldn't be misled. There's only one Trump supporter in Ukraine, me, that's it, the real one. Everyone else is either a hater or someone who changed sides for convenience. Of course, now Republican parties will start to form as well. And everything else, Ukraine has lived for 30 years, and in its 30th year, it ended up in a war. And that's when it hit them. They need the Republican Party. I look at this and it's all ridiculous. I'm even more disgusted when real communists or opportunists approach libertarianism, my topic. That's even more dangerous to me. That's why it's important for people to hear this. Please consider things more broadly and don't believe immediately. Ukraine has never had real Republicans. All this is so that later you know what the hope is? I know. I don't want to talk about it because you don't share this in private conversations. And I was invited, but I didn't go. I know who comes to Washington, to which breakfasts, to which dinners, to which events, I mean Ukrainians, and how they come and talk about how they're Republicans. Give us support in the next elections, not even financial support, just, to take a picture somewhere. And I, excuse me, know some crap, to put it bluntly, about people. And he's a Republican, and he wants to be in power, and 6 months ago he was criticizing Zelensky. Today he's already saying that basically things aren't so bad. As long as nobody bothers him, well, in short.
People hope that politicians will come who can really bring order to Ukraine and who know what needs to be done. There aren't many such people. Everyone talks about the need for change, that there should be reforms. Everything is bad, but it needs to be good. But no one specifically says how to make things better. What are the specific ways and methods?
Yes, that's right. They just repeat slogans for good against bad. But when asked, are you for or against privatization, freedom of speech, or certain tax rates? And what form of taxation? And the stock market, the capital market, corporate law, judicial reform. What kind of judicial reform? It's easy to say we'll return territories diplomatically, or we'll make courts honest. But how exactly? There are many ways, some unrealistic and ineffective. That's just surface reform. Nothing will change inside. There is no such discussion in Ukraine. You have your own platform for these talks, but nothing like that exists in Ukraine. Zelensky has suppressed any political process, and people like Poroshenko don't need this discussion. He has his own agenda, similar to Zelensky's, but presented differently. You could say Zelensky weakened his support base, the army of Mulavir.
That's why I sincerely invite opinion leaders to come to our channel, give interviews, and share their thoughts and views. Maybe you feel in your heart that you know what needs to be done in this country? Come here, share what's wrong and your ideas. People can decide. Subscribe to Dennis's channel. Thanks for joining us. See you next time.
Thank you.